Welcome to the full breakdown of the bacon diet. This is the exact diet that I follow when preparing for bodybuilding shows and also doing photo shoots like seen in the thumbnail for this very video. We've got a lot of ground to cover and this might be a longer video, so for that reason I broke everything down into chapters. Right now you're already watching the introduction. Following along with that, we're going to have an explanation on ketosis and how it works. Then we're going to address why specifically bacon. Moving forward, we're going to get into electrolyte management. Number 5, I'm going to cover off all of the vitamins and minerals that bacon actually doesn't cover, and that's going to factor into some of the other foods that you are allowed to eat on this program. Number 6, we're going to be going with exercise, and number 7 is going to be the weekly tactics. So starting things off from the very top, how does this bacon diet work? The structure is as follows. 80% of your food volume is going to come from bacon itself. The other 20% of your food volume is coming from supportive foods that have vitamins and minerals that bacon actually does not cover. Now the nice thing about bacon, it actually already has every single B vitamin, and it's loaded up with a lot of different minerals as well. But some of the things it is missing, fiber for example, vitamin C for example, and also some of the different minerals that you find more regularly in seafood like selenium and zinc. We want to supplement those on the sides. Now as a note before we dive in, I'm not a big fan of taking supplements. I like to get my vitamins and minerals from food sources whenever possible. However, I do make an exception for the minerals needed in electrolytes, which we'll cover in that chapter. So to give you guys a very basic baseline. If you had a caloric budget of 2,000 calories, that means that you would be getting 1,600 calories from bacon and then 400 calories from alternative food sources. What I do for these food sources, I will break down in the chapter regarding vitamins and minerals, but just to give you guys something to look forward to, it's going to mostly be comprised of blueberries, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, sauerkraut, and sardines. I'll get in more depth detail about that in the future chapters. With this, I can tell you, and I've done it in a previous video, 1 pound of uncooked bacon that you would buy in the sleeves from your local grocery store, when it's cooked down to its final weight, ends up being around 660 calories with a little bit of wiggle room in either end. That means if you have a pound, you're having 660 calories. 2 pounds, let's just round that to 1,300 calories. And if you have 3 pounds of bacon, let's just round that to 2,000 calories flat. If you're going to follow this program, you want to predetermine how much bacon you're going to have and then calculate out your remaining 20% from there. The reason for this is we do want to maintain ketosis. Now let's move on to chapter 2, ketosis. So ketosis, what exactly is it? Well, your body, much like the fuel in an engine of a car, runs on a fuel source. There are a few different sources that it can run on, but the two most common are as follows. We've got glucose and we've got ketones. Now, glucose comes from the foods that we eat that have carbohydrates in them. Glucose is, in fact, your brain's preferred energy source, but that doesn't mean that ketones are bad. Let me explain it like this. Glucose is like having energy stored in the refrigerator. Ketones are like having energy stored in the freezer. It takes longer to thaw out the food that's in the freezer, but by virtue of freezing the food, you can store that energy for long periods of time for future use. But it's not readily available, especially if we've got food in the refrigerator, aka glucose. And just like the foods in the refrigerator, you can't store that long term. Our bodies can only store, depending on your body size and your fitness level, 400 and 700 grams of carbohydrates as glucose in the body. And when this glucose gets used, it is immediately consumed and excreted through urine. So you can't long-term store glucose. And unless you're doing very specific situations, you can't over-store glucose either. Once you've met your glucose threshold, any additional food that you eat is actually getting stored as body fat. Now, body fat is ketones and ketones is body fat. This is where things get really interesting. The only way to activate ketones is to completely rid yourself of glucose. But once you're on ketones, your body is now using fat as fuel. And this fat is analogous with the fat that you receive from a ketogenic based diet. Think about operating a car and you have a gear shifter. If you're going from first gear to second gear all of the time, you're changing up your modality a lot, and unless you're a professional race car driver, you might not be the most efficient at that. But if you're able to get into a gear and stay in that gear for a long period of time, you will become very efficient at operating in that gear level. On the ketogenic diet, if you're taking in fat, Your body doesn't have to do any switching to go from the food you just ate to using your own body fat. And this is what makes a ketogenic diet, whether it's done through any fatty means like eating avocados, coconut oil, or the carnivore approach where you go meat-based only, both of these things will get you into ketosis and get you burning your own body fat much quicker. But that's not the only thing that's at play here. As we remove glucose from the body, your insulin sensitivity actually increases, and being insulin sensitive is a really good thing. The last thing you want to be is insulin resistant, because insulin is the hormone that triggers to the brain that is now time to start storing energy. If you're insulin sensitive, this means that it takes less food to kickstart this process, which means that you won't have these hunger hormones urging you to continue eating. Now, you might have experienced at some point in your lifetime, if you're eating a lot of carbohydrates, you never exactly feel full. In fact, depending on the carbohydrate you have, you might even feel more hungry after you've eaten. This is because high levels of glucose will eventually lead to insulin resistance, meaning your brain continues to eat food, but it's not signaling to the rest of the body that it's full. This leads to overindulgence. This leads to body fat storage. By instead opting to use ketones, our insulin sensitivity rapidly increases. We're able to get through the day on much less food. And with the bacon diet, you would be surprised at how well you can get through the day on such low calories. This is why I always use this to shred body fat before a bodybuilding show or before photo shoots, because I can still maintain a regular lifestyle without feeling the grueling agony of being low calorie, because I am so deeply ketogenic adapted. Depending on how much fat you have to lose, you could maintain the bacon diet for months, or you could use it as a quick program to shed 10 pounds of body fat and then gradually go back to something a little bit more of a regular diet. But there's no reason you couldn't just make this your regular diet, just like I have. My insulin levels are very sensitive. I'm able to get through a day very easily on anywhere between 2,000 and 2,500 calories, and that's maintaining a high level of physical activity. Now, one more thing before we move to the next chapter I do want to talk about is leptin. Leptin is the hormone responsible for signaling to your body that you're actually full, no longer hungry. The more insulin sensitive you are, the more powerful the leptin hormone is, which means if you're in a state of deep ketosis, you don't get hungry anymore. You no longer feel that rumbling in the stomach, which can be quite painful, especially if you've had a lot of carbohydrates recently. All of that goes away completely thanks to the hormone leptin. This is why the ketogenic diet is so incredible. If you stick to it and you get into deep ketosis, you will shed body fat faster than you can hit the subscribe button. I absolutely guarantee it. So you might be wondering, why exactly bacon out of all the different foods you could have? Now let's move on to chapter 3. Why specifically bacon? There's many specific reasons why I go for bacon in particular. I'm going to try to address all of them. First and foremost, bacon has the perfect keto macros at almost exactly 1-to-1. This means that it has 1 gram of fat for every gram of protein. Many people that start the carnivore diet, something they do notice is that as they continue on with it, sometimes they find themselves extremely hungry, or they might even find themselves in a weight loss stall. This is because a lot of the times, very well intentioned, but they're getting more protein than they are fat. What ends up happening is a process called gluconeogenesis. Now that's a long word, so I'm going to have that written out as a text. I'm not necessarily going to put that on the whiteboard. But gluconeogenesis is the procedure of converting protein to glucose. If you have more protein than your body can use for recovery, it will start converting that into an energy source that it can use, which is a great procedure. But the only thing that causes a little bit of issues with this, if you remember earlier I was talking about leptin being that I'm full hormone. Gluconeogenesis will reduce your leptin and increase what is called ghrelin. Ghrelin being the hunger hormone. That's when you get that rumbling in the stomach that says, I need to eat more. It's not the end of the world that some carnivore dieters go with higher protein yielding foods, but by doing that, they do introduce the potential of overeating or perhaps going off their diet entirely. So that's why I really try to get these keto macros down as best as I possibly can. 1 gram of fat, 1 gram of protein, and bacon is perfect for that. But there's more at play than just the keto macros. Bacon itself also has all of the essential minerals you need for electrolyte balance. Really, it's electrolyte management for dummies. If you're eating bacon, all you have to do is just drink enough water and your electrolytes are going to be peaking. In fact, you might feel after having bacon and maybe a liter of water, you're feeling absolutely cranked. I want you guys to experience that for yourselves. It is an amazing feeling. This is because bacon also has the perfect ratios for electrolytes. You just need to add the water. I'll talk way more in depth about the electrolytes in the next chapter. But bacon electrolyte management is easy mode, especially if you're eating a lot of bacon. Now, depending on how much you're having in a day, if you're having 1 pound of bacon, I highly recommend that you do supplement your minerals so that you can have electrolytes. But if you're having 3 pounds of bacon per day, easy mode. You would not need any electrolyte water whatsoever. At that point, you would just want to drink as much water as you can because there is a lot of sodium in the bacon. When we get to electrolytes, I'll explain how all of that works. Beyond just that, bacon and most red meats in particular have all of the essential B vitamins. Sorry about the bad S there. When it comes to vitamins, a lot of people really have no idea how much red meat has in it because when you buy meat at the store, the labels don't show you any of the vitamin or mineral content. And if they do, they might only show you iron or magnesium or calcium. They don't show you the whole picture. I don't know why they don't, but I'm telling you as an absolute fact, red meat and especially bacon has all of the B vitamins and it also has a lot of minerals too, like zinc, magnesium, potassium, iron, calcium. They are all in there with a few exceptions, which I'll cover off in chapter 5. It's going to be mostly things like fiber and vitamin C. But let's face it, there's one more reason why bacon, it tastes good. I've never heard in my entire life anybody ever say, oh, geez, you know, I kind of like bacon, but I wish it just tasted better. You just don't hear that. You don't hear that, and that's what makes this so great. Because when it comes to weight loss, a lot of times people are eating foods they don't necessarily like the plain chicken breasts and the green beans and the white rice. It's super boring, and then once their goal is achieved, they immediately go on a bender, gain all the weight back. It's a lot of the times the reason behind yo-yo dieting. The bacon tastes so good that it doesn't feel like you're dieting, and once you've reached your goal weight, you can just continue eating more bacon and then add things to your diet. You don't have to stop because you like it so much. So that is why I choose bacon. Now let's move on to chapter 4, electrolyte management. So electrolytes are comprised of many different minerals, but the two most important would be sodium chloride and potassium chloride. Nicely in third place is going to be magnesium. There's more like iron and calcium, but what you really need to focus on are these top two right here. Here's how electrolytes work. The word electricity. You have all these cells in your body, across the spectrum. Cells, 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 cells. In order to get a cell to activate and perform some sort of function, whatever that function ends up being, it needs an electrical signal to activate it. It's like turning on a light switch, quite literally. You got a dark room, you flip on the lights, boom. Well, that flipping of the switch, that is your sodium chloride. Sodium chloride is salt. So salt, that's our light switch. Let's think about it a little bit differently. Imagine you've got a syringe. You're taking this syringe and you're pushing in. You're pushing in the salt. Well, once the salt's pushed into the membrane of the cell, what do? Because now your syringe is all the way pushed in. Well, that's kind of a problem, right? Like I've already used it. In comes potassium chloride. Potassium chloride's function is to retract the syringe. In fact, you could also think of it like a seesaw. While the salt is going in, the potassium is pulling it back so that you can have an everlasting undulating system of salt going in and the potassium pulling the syringe back. Having these in a perfect balance is so crucial. You will know if you have your electrolytes peaked because you're going to feel absolutely cranked. People that go on the ketogenic diet, a lot of the times, their electrolytes are all messed up because they cut out glucose, which leads to a lot of water retention, They urinate, and with urinating comes losing all of your salt and potassium. This is where all these crazy headaches come in. They call it the keto flu, but what's really happening there is they've depleted themselves of all their electrolytes. But the opposite is true. If your electrolytes are peaking, if you've had your salt water or if you've had your bacon, as long as you've also maintained your fluid intake, you're going to notice that your body just feels loose. It feels quick. You can activate it, and you go long periods of time with really strenuous exercise and feel great. And even if you're not exercising, let's say you're at a desk working and doing your day job, your brain's gonna feel better. You're gonna think your thoughts faster. You're gonna act quicker. Having proper electrolytes is so vastly under talked about, but it is probably the single most important thing in this entire world of feeling good. You know, when you feel good, you can't explain it, but you just feel good. That's electrolytes, guys. And when you feel terrible, that is a lack of electrolytes. Before we break down exactly how to regulate these, I got one final analogy for you guys. Remember we were talking about with flipping that light switch off? What happens if you flip the light switch down? That is your energy leaving the body. Without electrolytes, you're dead. You cannot live without them. So the next time someone says, oh, I don't take in salt because I have history of heart disease, you don't have a salt problem. You have an everything else problem. Fix that and you'll never worry about salt again. And the good news is, if you're following the bacon diet and you're eating bacon multiple times a day, the ratios of salt to potassium are already pretty much laid out for you, including the magnesium. All you would have to do then is just make sure that you're drinking enough water. You'll know if your electrolytes are really good if your urine has a faint yellow look to it. Like, imagine you took a normal glass of water, just put a little bit of that lemon crystal light in it and stirred it around. That's the color you're looking for. If you've got that, you are in great shape. You're going to be absolutely cranked, over the moon, feeling great. If your urine is completely clear, this is the canary in the coal mine. You're urinating way more than you're taking in. This means that at some point in the near future, you're going to hit a brick wall. Try to the best of your ability never to have perfectly clear urine. This is why even when I'm on the bacon diet, I still put pinches of salt and potassium in my water and make sure that no matter what, I couldn't possibly screw up. And you can have the opposite problem, especially if you've had a bunch of bacon and you didn't have any water with it. If your urine looks like orange Kool-Aid, that's not a good thing either. That means that you've got more minerals coming in than your body knows what to do with, and so it's urinating all of those out. Whether your urine is crystal clear or cloudy yellow, those are two opposite sides of the coin that are very bad. If you've got that very, very faint yellow urine, you're going to feel so good you're not going to know what to do with yourself. You're going to have no choice but to exercise. You're just going to have that much energy. I promise you guys, you have so much energy you wouldn't be able to help hitting the like button. So what is the recipe for my electrolyte water? What do I do? If you're watching this on a cell phone, I highly recommend that right now you use your phone to take a screenshot of the screen starting now. You can use this recipe going forward forever. Now I like to use a water bottle much like this one right here. So I've got 1 liter of water here. I measure out 1 gram of salt. I drop that in. Then I measure out 500 milligrams of potassium chloride and drop that in. Lastly, I've got some magnesium sulfate. It's also known as Epsom salt. You buy 1 bag and you've got it for life. Yes, it is edible, but in small quantities. Don't overdo it or you will have a mudslide. You've been warned. As an extra, I use purified water, but if you don't mind spending the money and getting some sort of mineral water, usually from some sort of mountain source, examples of that could be Fiji waters, Evian waters. Sometimes there's local brands if you live in a mountainous area. Those are always going to be a better water source because those naturally have minerals already in them. It has a better pH balance, which means that it won't be urinated out as quickly. I highly recommend that, but it can be expensive. If you don't have that kind of budget, putting salt and potassium in your water will, for the most part, work well enough. So this is the formula I use. If you live a sedentary lifestyle, you probably could get away with reducing the numbers a little bit. However, if you're doing physical activity, I would actually encourage you to go a little bit higher on the salt and potassium. Not by too much, but just a little bit. That should really aid you in your workout. As far as magnesium goes, you really only need the magnesium maybe once or twice a day. You don't really urinate magnesium quite like you do with salt and potassium. Just getting your magnesium to a total level of around 500 milligrams per day is gonna go a long way for you. Magnesium is great for reducing inflammation, pain in the joints, pain in the muscles. If you ever work out very intensely and have some magnesium, you might notice that you feel better the next day, and it also really helps with getting to bed. If you have any sort of sleeping issues at night, magnesium may be the thing that really solves that. Just try to get your magnesium every day. There's going to be one more thing I do want to mention. I know this is going to sound totally crazy because of what we've been talking about with glucose. But that being said, if you do work out really hard, something you can do while you're exercising is put in 10 grams of dextrose for every perhaps mile that you're running or doing cardio. Or if you're exercising with weight training, you could go all the way up to 40 grams of dextrose and do quite well on that. Now, I know some people are going to say, well, that might kick me out of ketosis. It's still not enough to really kick you out, but because you're working out, you're going to use up that glucose almost instantly through your workout. And the little bit of glucose is going to raise your insulin just enough to really shuttle these nutrients around the body. That being said, if you're sedentary, if you're not working out, definitely skip the sugar. It's not needed. But if you do a lot of long distance cardio or really heavy weight training, a little bit of dextrose is going to go a very, very long way. Now let's move on to chapter 5, secondary vitamins and minerals. So way back in the beginning of the video, we talked about there being a 20% budget for other foods. I don't want these foods just to be willy-nilly whatever you want. We still want to make sure that we're rounding out our nutrition effectively. Now, bacon on its own has no fiber, no vitamin C. So I have a perfect solution for both of those issues. Blueberries. I go through blueberries like absolute crazy. If you go to Costco and get the frozen blueberries, the entire bag for 3 pounds is only 700 calories, which means if you had half the bag every single day, it's only 350 calories, and it's going to get you all the fiber you could possibly need, and it's also going to get you all the vitamin C you could need. So you're hitting 2 birds with 1 stone. Beyond that, blueberries also in general just have a whole lot going for them. I'll probably someday make a video exclusively on blueberries because there's way more that I could talk about, but I want to keep things going. You're going to get your vitamin C and fiber from blueberries. You can also substitute this with blackberries, strawberries, bananas. Just make sure that that daily limit still stays in the 20% range. And then you're also factoring in what the other foods that are on here. Next up, I'm going for cottage cheese or Greek yogurt. The reason for this is because I want to have healthy probiotics. Again, I'm probably going to have to make that in a separate video, but the short answer on this one, probiotics fuel the gut, and the gut starts from the throat and ends at the colon. It's responsible for so many things that I couldn't possibly get to all of it in this video, but just to give you guys the short of it, the gut communicates with the brain. A lot of the things that you feel or experience are actually stimulations from the gut. If you've ever had bad food, you'll know that you feel really bad afterwards. It's your gut signaling to the brain that things are not going quite well. When you have a healthy gut, everything works phenomenally. It's like putting motor oil in the engine of your car. Yeah, we've got the gasoline or the diesel, you know, the ketones, the glucose, but if you don't have a good gut, a lot of it goes to waste. And a lot of bodybuilders, they never talk about gut health, which is something I find really kind of unfortunate, because when you have a healthy gut, everything just falls into place. What we can do to get a better gut is to introduce new bacteria to it. Good bacteria, by the way, coming in the forms of live cultures, usually found in fermented foods or fermented dairy. So on the board, I've got cottage cheese or Greek yogurt. To me, these are interchangeable. You can have one or the other. I don't really get too crazy with this. I just have a little bit per day, a couple spoonfuls here and there. There is going to be protein in the Greek yogurt or cottage cheese in the form of casein, which is nice. You get a little bit of extra protein, and because it's casein, it digests much slower than normal proteins. It doesn't knock you out of ketosis like certain certain proteins can, like whey isolate, for example. This is awesome. I have this every day for the exact same reasons. I also have sauerkraut every day. Sauerkraut is fermented cabbage. It's going to have an insane amount of these healthy bacteria that are really going to help out with your gut internally. I don't have it written out here, but apple cider vinegar is pretty analogous with sauerkraut, and so is kimchi. So if you're able to get your probiotics from a dairy source and your probiotics from a fermented vegetable source, if you're doing both of those things, your gut health is going to be absolutely top-notch, peaking. And by the way, if you mix that with good electrolytes, everything just works. It comes together so nicely. Last up, I've got sardines on the list. Sardines have a lot of minerals that you don't necessarily find in land animals. Things like selenium, iodine, we do get zinc. These are all really good for maintaining a healthy thyroid. So sometimes people have thyroid issues. If you get your selenium and iodine up front, a lot of times prevention is the best medicine. I have 2 tins of sardines every single day, basically no matter what. So I actually treat them in a weird way like vitamins. And then on top of that, it does have a little bit of protein in there. The sardines, because they're so small, there's no mercury content in them. The smaller the fish, the less mercury. And the bigger the fish, the more mercury. So unfortunately, you know, tuna is at like the far end of that spectrum. Sardines, anchovies, these are at the very, very bottom. Now, anchovies are also a great option, but they don't seem to be as readily available as sardines. Sardines are going to be in most grocery stores, which is why I prefer them. You can substitute those out with mackerel, herring. If you've got the money, you could eat salmon every day, just like a little bit of salmon. These are all freshwater fishes that don't have mercury, and they all have really high fish oil content, which will probably be its own video as well. So I'd like to eventually be able to really go in depth on all of these topics. But for now, let's move on to chapter 6, exercise. So when I train clients, one of the things I really pay attention to is their starting body weight. It's my opinion that people that are on the larger side, not trying to make anyone uncomfortable here, but people that are in the 300 plus range shouldn't really be doing any cardio. There's too much body mass for them to be able to do it effectively. It's going to make things really difficult. I don't like to prescribe cardio until a client is down to 250 pounds. With heavier clients, I do introduce walking. Most people do find walking to be pretty sustainable, even at larger weights, but I try to really avoid bike, swimming, running, elliptical, all of these things I try to hold off on until their joints are ready to handle that, because having that much body mass is an enormous amount of pressure. The good news is that's not entirely true for weight training, so I will start clients on weight training just about right away if they're willing to do that. Otherwise, just get them on the bacon diet. They start shedding weight like absolute crazy. Now, with all things in life, the more you do, the better your results are going to get. If you were living a sedentary lifestyle and you did the bacon diet, you would lose weight. But if you want to do cardio, you should. You're going to lose weight faster. That's just the simple truth of it. Myself personally, I'm usually running 5 or 6 miles per day, or I'm doing some other form of cardio. I know that's not realistic for people that are starting out, but if you can maintain the bacon diet and also doing cardio, the weight loss is basically guaranteed. In fact, I don't think it's possible to put on weight with this program. That's how much I believe in it. The progression that you would want to do for weight loss, you want to walk a minimum of 5 miles every day. I know for a lot of people that can sound like a lot. You might have to get creative with this one. If you have dogs, great opportunity to get your steps in walking the dog. If you work in an office building, see if there are some calls that you can take not at your desk that you can walk around and talk for. Otherwise, if you do have lunch breaks, walk on your lunch break, eat food at your desk. There's a lot of different ways you can skin this cat, but the most important thing is everyone's going to have to find a creative solution to work in 5 miles a day on their own. On top of this, 5 miles is the minimum. There's no upper limit to walking. You can walk as much as you would like to, and the more steps you take, the more fat is going to come off the body. At a certain point, you might find that walking is too time consuming for the amount that I'm talking about, which is really a great way to start introduce running. Running is going to basically accelerate your progress from walking by a magnitude of 2 to 3, even 4 times, depending on how fast you get. This is going to take some progression, and I will cover that in a different video. You really want to be doing 3 things. You want to be sticking to a highly nutritious diet. You do want to be training with weights, and you do want to have good cardiovascular health. If you're missing in any one of these 3 areas, you're leaving a lot of progress on the table, and in most cases, a lot of people find themselves either in a plateau or a stall because they've completely neglected one of those 3 areas. I'm just saying do all 3. Just do all 3, and you'll be okay. Now let's move on to Chapter 7, Weekly Tactics. So here's what we want to do. First things first, we want to calculate out what your calories are going to be. I have the most simple way of doing this ever. You don't ever need to use a calculator to figure out your calories again. Just take your current body weight right now and multiply that by 10. If you're watching this video outside of the United States and use kilograms instead of pounds, multiply your current body weight right now by 22. That is going to be your target range. This is what is also known as a basal metabolic rate. Now, it does get a little bit more specific than that, but it requires a lot of calculation, and even that is not perfectly accurate. I prefer my simple approach: body weight times 10 in pounds, body weight times 22 in kilograms. It's going to get you close enough without having to really inundate yourself with all these complex calculations. So let's just say, for the sake of this example, that I was exactly 200 pounds. Well, that would put me at exactly 2,000 calories. So this is how I would approach it. Knowing that 1 pound of uncooked bacon is 660 calories, I would go on a daily allowance of 2 pounds of bacon. That's going to roughly bring me to around 1,300 calories. That allows me to then shore up my weaknesses with about 350 calories from alternate sources: Greek yogurt, blueberries, sauerkraut, etc. That will ultimately land me anywhere between the 1,700 and 1,900 calorie range. That would put me in a really great caloric deficit. The reason I like this so much is eating to your basal metabolic rate. You've basically allowed yourself all the way up to your maintenance calories. And then any exercise you do or any movement you do for the whole day now is fat loss. Your basal metabolic rate is the amount of calories your body is going to burn if you were in a vegetative state. So let's say, I hate to be, grotesque here, but let's say you got in a very bad car accident. You're in the hospital, you're in this bed, you're hooked to a machine, you can't move. Your body is going to burn your basal metabolic rate in calories. Now, I'm talking anything outside of being in that gurney is extra calories you're burning through the day. And small activities are actually called NEAT, which stands for non-exercise anaerobic thermogenesis, which is a big mouthful. So you'll probably never hear me say that again. To make this super simplified, if I'm eating bacon, picking the bacon up and putting it into my mouth is some sort of kinetic energy that my body had to use. Those are calories being burned throughout the day. Now, of course, maybe those are small, but when you add them all up from morning to night, you're looking at about 200 or 300 calories burned in NEAT activity. And then any exercise you did beyond that, it's all extra credit. Every mile walked, every mile ran, every rep on the bench press, all of these things are just propelling you further into your weight loss goals. So that is why I stick to the approach. I multiply my body weight by 10. Those are my calories for the day. I'll exercise myself into the rest of the deficit. As far as cadence goes, if you follow the bacon diet 7 days a week and you follow the program exactly, you get an A+. That is doing the diet perfect. If you want to have a cheat meal, you can have a cheat meal. It's not the end of the world. You just have to understand that your timeline is now getting wider. Now, you don't want to let your timeline get too wide. If you were, for example, to do bacon diet 3 days on and then whatever you want 4 days off, you're not going to make forward progress. But even if you were to do 4 days of bacon on, 3 days off, it's going to be the slowest progress anyone's ever heard of, but it is still forward momentum. So really, you want to ask yourself, how bad do I want it? and what's my timeline. As a simple recommendation, I like to get people to just do 5 days strict bacon diet and then allow 2 meals per week. They're just totally freebies. So if the family wants to go out for pizza, it's Friday night or it's Saturday night, go out for the pizza. Yes, it's going to knock you out of ketosis. But you're going to be in ketosis the very next day. As long as you wake up in the morning, you go for bacon instead of anything carbs, you will be back to the same level of ketosis you were at before the pizza dinner by the end of the day. I don't think that's a huge deal. But again, it depends on your timeline and your goals. The faster you're trying to lose the weight, the closer to A+ you need to be. That's basically it. So if you've made it this far and you want to try the bacon diet, I've got very good news. I've recently created my very own Discord group. You can join this group and you'll be able to have direct access to me as well as a support group of other people that are also on the bacon diet. We can lose this weight together. I'm currently on it myself. At the time of me filming this video, I'm 198 pounds. I'm trying to shred down to 180, so I'm going to be showing people exactly what I'm doing in my day-to-day life in this Discord group. If you're watching this video and it's down the road, I might already be at my goal physique by then, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to help people out. If you join this group, I'll make sure to put you on the right path, and hey, if you don't like it, you can quit. It's not going to cost you anything, so this will be much lower investment than going out and getting a trainer or a nutritionist and then finding out that you don't really like their work. So I highly urge, if you want to try it, there's going to be a link below. Otherwise, write in the comments Discord or bacon, and I'll reach out to you directly to help you get set up. One final thing, if you have made it this far, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. All of these things really help grow. Also like the video, engage with it, leave comments. I really appreciate all of that. I know I'm a new YouTuber, but I feel like we're on the cusp of achieving something great together. So with that, I've been Andrew Fillion. I'll be showing you guys my real progress in real time in future videos, so keep an eye out for that. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.